When you stay silent, people think they can decide for you. My son started signing documents in my place. My daughter-in-law spoke about me in the third person, even when I was in the room, and I listened to everything without saying a word. What they didn't know was that I was waiting for the exact moment when they would go too far. And when that happened, I didn't need to raise my voice. The law did it for me. My name is Robert. I'm 71 years old, and I've spent the last 40 years building a meaningful life. I worked as a civil engineer until I retired at 65. My wife, Margaret, died 3 years ago. Cancer. It was quick, painful, but she passed away with dignity. Since then, I've lived alone in a house I bought in 1984 in Portland, Oregon. 3 bedrooms, a large backyard, everything paid off. I have 2 sons. The oldest, David, is 42 and married to Linda. The youngest, Thomas, lives in Seattle and visits us infrequently. The relationship was always good. Family dinners, birthdays, holidays. I thought we had built something solid, but things change when money enters the conversation, or when people think you're not paying attention anymore. In recent months, I've started noticing small changes. David was spending more time here. He's always been thoughtful, but now he came 3 or 4 times a week. Linda, too. She brought food, tidied the house, asked if I was taking my medication. At first, I thought it was kind. But then I realized she was staring intently at the papers on my desk, looking at the folders, asking about the will, about the house, about the bills. I answered calmly. I said everything was settled, and it was. But she didn't seem satisfied with that. She wanted details. She wanted to know where the documents were, who my lawyer was, how much money I had in the bank. I didn't give her those answers, not because I was hiding something, but because it wasn't her business. And that's when everything started to change. They started talking amongst themselves in hushed voices as if I wasn't there. They started exchanging glances, and I realized it. They thought I was losing my lucidity, that I was becoming confused, fragile, vulnerable. But I wasn't. I was just silent. If you're listening to this right now, I want to ask you something. Subscribe to the channel and leave a comment saying where you're listening from. It's not just a number. It's you saying you understand, that you've seen this happen before, or that you know what it's like to be underestimated. And that makes a difference. It lets you know you're not alone. I'm not alone either. I realized it early on. It's important that you understand this. It wasn't something that caught me by surprise later on. It was in the little things. In the way David started picking up the mail before me. He said it was to help me, that I didn't need to worry about bills. But I always paid my bills. I always knew exactly what came in and what went out. He would take the envelopes to his house. He said he was going to organize them, and I let him, because I wanted to see how far it would go. Linda started suggesting I sell the house. She said it was too big for me, that I could hurt myself on the stairs, that it would be better to live somewhere smaller, more practical, maybe closer to them. She said this with a smile, with that sweet voice people use when they think you're incapable of making your own decisions. I just shook my head. I said I'd think about it, but I didn't. This house is mine. I didn't build it alone, but I built my life within it. Margaret died here. Our children grew up here. Every room holds a memory. I wasn't going to sell because someone thought I was too old to climb stairs. But I didn't say that. I just let them think I was considering it, and they believed it. Because silence, for many people, seems like agreement. Thomas called once. We talked briefly. He asked if everything was all right. I said yes. He asked if David was helping me. I said yes. He seemed relieved. He said he was busy with work, but that he trusted his brother. I didn't say anything. I didn't mention the hushed conversations, or the glances, or the way Linda opened my drawers when she thought I wasn't looking. I just let him think everything was resolved, because in a way it was. One day David brought a man here. He introduced himself as a financial advisor. He said David had asked him to look into my situation, just to make sure I was protected, that my investments were safe. I looked at David. He smiled. He said it was just a conversation, that I didn't need to worry. I let the man talk. He asked about my retirement, about the house, about life insurance. I answered the basics. I didn't give him access to anything. I didn't sign anything. I just listened. And in the end, I thanked him. I said I would think about it. The man left. David stayed. He asked what I thought. I said I found it interesting. He seemed satisfied, but I saw in his eyes that he expected more. He expected me to hand everything over right there, to sign a power of attorney, to let him take care of everything. And when I didn't do that, he got frustrated. He didn't say anything, but I saw it. Linda started talking more about retirement homes. She brought brochures. She said they were beautiful places with activities, nurses, that I could meet new people, making friends. I looked at the brochures. I flipped through the pages, and I gave them back to her. I said it looked good, but that I was still doing well here. She insisted. She said it was just so I could see it, that I didn't need to decide anything now. But I knew what she was doing. She was planting the idea, preparing the ground, so that when they thought it was the right time, I would already be conditioned to accept. But I wasn't going to accept. I was just going to let them think I would. They thought I didn't understand. This became clear in a conversation I overheard. I was in the backyard watering the plants. The kitchen window was open. David and Linda were inside. She said I was getting worse, that I was forgetting things, that I was repeating questions. David agreed. He said it was natural, that I was getting older, that they needed to act soon before it got harder. Linda asked if he had spoken to the lawyer. David said yes, that the lawyer said that, with a doctor's note, they could get guardianship, that it was best for me. That way they could take care of everything without me having to worry. I turned off the hose. I went in through the back door. I walked to the kitchen. They stopped talking immediately. Linda smiled. She asked if I wanted coffee. I said yes. I sat at the table. I drank my coffee in silence, and they thought I hadn't heard anything. But I had, word for word. I stopped explaining myself. This is another important thing you need to understand. I could have confronted them right there. I could have said I heard everything, that I knew what they were planning. But what would have been the point? They would have denied it. They would have said I misunderstood, that they were just worried about me. And I would have wasted energy trying to prove something they had already decided not to believe. So I chose silence, not because I was weak, but because I knew that sooner or later they would be wrong. And when they were wrong, I wouldn't need to say anything. David started bringing me documents to sign. He said they were simple things: insurance renewal, bank registration update, authorization for him to receive mail in my name. I read everything, every line, every paragraph, and only signed what made sense. I returned the rest, saying I'd think about it. He grew impatient but hid it, saying it was no problem, that we'd sort it out later. But I could see the frustration, the rush. He wanted control, and I wasn't giving it to him. Linda suggested I stop driving. She said she'd seen a news report about elderly people causing accidents, that it was dangerous, that they could take me wherever I needed to go. I'd driven for 53 years without a ticket, without a scratch. But I didn't argue. I just said I'd think about it, and I kept driving when I needed to in my own way, at my own pace. Thomas called again. This time he seemed worried. He said David had mentioned I was forgetful, that maybe I should get some tests done. I asked what kind of forgetfulness. He couldn't say. He just repeated what David had said. I told him he was fine, that he had a checkup every year, that the doctor hadn't found anything wrong. Thomas seemed relieved. He said it was good to know. And he hung up. He didn't ask anything else. He didn't come to visit. He didn't want to confirm it himself. He just trusted what his brother said. And I let him, because I wanted to see how far that trust would go, how far they would feel safe enough to cross the line. The line was crossed on a Saturday morning. I was having coffee when the phone rang. It was the bank. The woman on the other end asked if I had authorized a large transfer. I said no. She said it had been done at the branch with my signature. I asked her to check again. She put me on hold. She came back after a few minutes. She said the signature was there, that it had been approved, but that since it was a large amount, they were confirming it for security reasons. I thanked her. I said I would go to the branch in person. I hung up, I went to the bank, I asked to see the document, and there it was, my signature, or something very similar to it, transferring $60,000 from my account to a joint account in the name of David and Linda. I asked when it had been done. The manager said it had been on Wednesday. I was at home on Wednesday all day. Nobody had taken me to the bank. Nobody had asked me to sign anything. I told the manager this. She was embarrassed. She said she would open an internal investigation, that she would block the joint account until it was clarified. I thanked her. I went back home and waited. David showed up late in the afternoon. He was nervous. He said the bank had called, that there had been a problem with the transfer. I asked what transfer. He stammered. He said it was something we had talked about, that it was to make things easier, so he could help with the bills. I said we never talked about that. He insisted, said I had forgotten. I shook my head, and said calmly, "I didn't forget, David. You forged my signature." He turned white. David tried to explain himself. He said it wasn't quite like that the bank's former manager knew him, that he had said it wasn't a problem, that it was common in families, that elderly parents transferred control to their children, that it was more practical. I let him speak. When he finished, I said, "You forged my signature, David. That's not practical. It's a crime." He remained silent. Linda arrived soon after. She tried a different approach. She said they were only trying to protect me, that I could be scammed by fraudsters, that it was better for the money to be in an account they controlled. I asked, "Protect from whom? From you?" She was offended. She said I was being unfair, that they would never do anything against me. I just looked at her. I didn't say anything else. They left. And I called my lawyer. I scheduled a meeting for Monday. When I got there, I explained everything. I showed the documents. I showed the forged signature. The lawyer analyzed it. He said it was serious, that I could sue, that I could file a police report. I asked what the other options were. He said I could revoke any power of attorney I had given, update my will, make everything very clear, and wait. Because if they tried again, then it would be easier to prove bad faith. I said that's what I wanted. Not revenge, just clarity and protection. He prepared the documents. I signed everything, in front of him, with witnesses. I updated the will. I divided everything equally between David and Thomas, but with a clause. Any attempt to contest or manipulate it would result in immediate exclusion, and I appointed an independent executor, someone who had nothing to gain and who could not be influenced. David tried to visit me again a few days later. I didn't open the door. He knocked, he called, he said he needed to talk to me. I sat in the living room, in silence. He left. Linda tried to call. I didn't answer. She left a message. She said I was exaggerating, that they were wrong but that they were good-hearted, that I couldn't cut them out of my life like that. I deleted the message. Thomas called. This time he seemed confused. He said David had told him we'd had a fight, that it had to do with money. I told the truth. I said David had forged my signature, that he had tried to transfer $60,000 without my knowledge. Thomas was silent. Then he said he was going to talk to his brother, that he was going to try to resolve it. I said, "No need to resolve anything, Thomas. It's already resolved." He asked what I meant. I said I had updated the will, that everything was clear, that he didn't need to worry. He thanked me and hung up. He didn't ask anything else. He didn't offer help. He didn't want to get involved. And I understood. For him, it was easier to remain neutral, to stay away, to let David and I sort it out on our own. And that was fine. I didn't expect him to choose a side. I only hoped he would understand mine. Weeks passed. David and Linda stopped trying to contact me. I continued my routine. I went to the market. I tended the yard. I read. I watched movies. I lived. As I always had, but with a peace I hadn't felt in months, because now I no longer needed to pretend I didn't see. I no longer needed to remain silent and wait. I had acted, and I had done it the right way. But the story didn't end there, because they thought their silence was a strategy, that if they waited long enough I would soften, I would forgive, I would forget, but I wouldn't. 3 months later I received a court summons. David was requesting my legal incapacitation, claiming that I no longer had the capacity to manage my assets, that I was confused, that I posed a risk to myself. He attached a medical report from a doctor I had never consulted, saying that I showed signs of dementia. I took everything to my lawyer. He read it and said it was serious, that we needed to respond strongly, that I needed to have a complete evaluation. Prove that I was lucid, competent, capable, I did. I went to 3 specialists, neurologist, psychiatrist, geriatrician. They all said the same thing. I was healthy, mentally fit, without any sign of cognitive decline. The reports were attached to the defense, and the lawyer requested a hearing. When the day arrived, I entered that courtroom knowing that I didn't need to prove anything. The expert reports already proved it, but David still tried. He hired a lawyer, and together they constructed a narrative. They said I was stubborn, that I isolated myself, that I refused help, that these were signs of confusion. The judge listened, and then called me to speak. I stood up. I looked at David, and I said, "I am not confused, Your Honor. I am only protecting what I have built, and whoever tries to take that away from me is not helping me. They are robbing me." The judge asked for silence. He asked some questions. He asked my full name, my date of birth, where I lived, for how long. I answered everything, calmly, clearly. He thanked me, and he ended the hearing. The decision came a week later. The request for legal incapacitation was denied. The judge said there was no basis for it, that the reports I presented were solid, that the report presented by David was from a doctor who had never personally examined me, and that, therefore, it was invalid. More than that. The judge ordered David to pay the court costs, and that he be prohibited from attempting another legal incapacitation without concrete proof of a change in my state of health. I didn't celebrate. I didn't call anyone to tell them. I just filed the decision away and went home. David tried to call me after that. I answered. He apologized. He said he had been manipulated, that the lawyer had convinced him it was the right thing to do, that he was just worried. I let him talk. When he finished, I said, "You tried to take away my dignity. David, you tried to declare me incapable. That's not concern, that's ambition." He remained silent. I hung up and blocked the number. Linda tried to send me a letter. She said she understood if I didn't want to see them anymore, but that at least I could think about my grandchildren, that they asked about me, that they missed me. I didn't answer, because I knew it was manipulation. The grandchildren were small. They didn't understand anything. They didn't ask about me. They just repeated what their parents said, and I wasn't going to fall for that. Thomas called. He said he'd heard about the lawsuit, that he thought David had exaggerated. I agreed. He asked if I was okay. I said yes. He asked if I needed anything. I said no, and the conversation ended there. He didn't take sides, he didn't get involved, and I didn't expect him to. Everyone makes their own choices, and I respect that. Their irreversible mistake came 6 months after the trial. I received a call from my lawyer. He said that David had tried to sell my house, that he had forged a power of attorney, presented it to the real estate agency, and put the property up for sale. Luckily, the agent was careful. She called the notary's office to confirm the authenticity of the document. The notary's office said there was no record, that the power of attorney was fake. The agent called the police, and David was summoned to give explanations. When the lawyer told me, I didn't feel anger. I felt relief, because now it wasn't just a family dispute anymore. It was a crime. Document forgery, attempted fraud, and I didn't need to do anything. The law would do it for me. The criminal case was opened. David tried to defend himself. He said the power of attorney was old, that he thought it was still valid. But the investigation showed that the document had been made recently, that the signature was his, trying to imitate mine, that it had no authentication, no witnesses, nothing. He was indicted, and the judge ruled that he could no longer approach me. He couldn't enter my street, he couldn't call me, he couldn't try to contact me in any way. Restraint order. Thomas called. He was shocked. He said he couldn't believe his brother had done that. I said, "You do believe it, Thomas. You just don't want to believe it, because if you believe it, you'll have to choose a side, and you don't want to do that." He didn't answer, and he hung up. I didn't call back. The criminal trial took place 8 months later. I was called to testify. I entered the courtroom, I sat in the witness chair, and I told everything from the beginning, from the hushed conversations, the glances, the documents, the bank transfer, the attempt to have him declared legally incompetent, and now the attempt to sell my house. The prosecutor asked why I hadn't acted sooner. I said, because I wanted to be sure. I wanted him to make the mistake on his own, without anyone being able to say that I forced him, that I provoked him, that I set him up. He made the mistake because he wanted to, because he thought he could, because he thought I was weak. The defense attorney tried to unsettle me. He asked if I didn't think I was exaggerating, that David was my son, that families should resolve problems at home. I looked at him and I said, families resolve conflicts, not crimes. He didn't ask anything else. The jury deliberated, and the sentence was handed down. David was convicted, 2 years in prison, suspended with probation. Community service, a 10-year ban on acting as anyone's lawyer, and a permanent restraining order. I didn't celebrate, I didn't cry, I just accepted it, because it was fair, it was proportionate, and it was inevitable. He had every chance to stop, to back down, to truly apologize, but he chose to continue, and now he was paying the price. Linda sent me another letter. This time she was furious. She said I had destroyed their lives, that the grandchildren would grow up knowing that their grandfather had put their father in jail, that I was cruel, that I was cold, that I had never truly loved. I read the letter, folded it, and put it in a folder, along with all the other evidence, in case I ever needed it again. Thomas called one last time. He said he wasn't going to try to understand anymore, that he thought David and I were adults and should sort this out ourselves, but that he wasn't going to choose sides, that he loved us both. I said, "Okay, Thomas, you don't have to choose. But one day you'll understand that not choosing is also a choice." He hung up, never called again. I sold the house a year later, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to, because it no longer had the same meaning. Margaret wasn't there anymore. The children weren't welcome anymore, and I didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. I bought a smaller apartment, 2 bedrooms, a view of a park, closer to the center, more practical, more mine. I donated most of the furniture I kept. Only the essentials, and I started again, not from scratch but from the point I chose. David served his alternative sentence. He went back to work. He rebuilt his life, far from me, and that's okay. I don't wish him ill, I just don't want any closeness. Thomas is still in Seattle. We don't talk, but we didn't fight either. We just distanced ourselves, and that's okay too. I have friends. I have hobbies. I have a routine that makes sense. And I have peace, something I didn't have when I pretended not to see, when I pretended not to understand, when I chose silence out of fear, not strategy. Today I choose silence because I can, because I no longer need to explain myself, because those who need to understand already understand, and those who don't understand won't understand even if I shout. Have you ever noticed that sometimes explaining is a waste of time? That some people only learn when they face the consequences? I learned this late, but I learned it. And when I learned it, my life changed, because I stopped wearing myself out trying to convince those who had already decided not to believe. I stopped justifying myself to those who had already judged me, and I started to act, not impulsively, not emotionally, but strategically, logically, inevitably. I let them make their own mistakes, and when they did, I only needed to present the evidence. The rest, the law took care of. Logic took care of it. Natural consequences took care of it. And today, when I look back, I don't feel regret. I don't feel hatred. I don't feel anger. I feel clarity, because everything that happened was their choice. I only reacted. I only protected myself. And I did it the right way, within the law, without shouting, without scandals, without cheap revenge, just justice. And that's enough. Some people think I was harsh, that I should have forgiven, that family is sacred, and I respect those who think that way. But family isn't sacred when it steals from you, when it lies to you, when it tries to take away your dignity. In those cases, family is just a word, and words without action are worthless. So I acted, and today I sleep in peace, knowing that I did what had to be done, the way it had to be done, at the right time. Today, I am 72 years old. I live alone and I like it that way. I wake up when I want. I read what I want. I see who I want. I don't owe anyone an explanation, and I don't expect anything from anyone. This isn't loneliness, it's freedom. Many people confuse the two. They think that those who are alone are sad, but not all silence is emptiness. Not all absence is lack. Sometimes it's a choice, sometimes it's peace. I don't hate my children, I just don't trust them, and that's okay. Trust is built, and it's destroyed, and when it's destroyed it doesn't come back. Not in the same way, so I chose to go on without it, without forcing it, without pretending, just accepting what is, and living from there. If you're listening to this now and you've been through something similar, I want you to know one thing. Silence isn't weakness. Not every warning is a favor. And those who realize it early don't need to rush. They just need to wait and act at the right time. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to take revenge to get justice. Sometimes all you have to do is let people dig their own hole, and when they fall, you just need to not jump with them. I didn't jump. I stood firm. And today, I am here. Whole, lucid, free, and at peace. And that, for me, is victory enough. If this story resonated with you, if you understood what I went through, I want to ask you something. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. Because here, we don't tell stories to entertain. We share experiences. We show that we're not alone, that there are other people going through the same things, and that it's possible to get through this with dignity, without hatred, without despair, only with clarity. So stay with me, keep following, because there are still many stories to tell, and I know you understand.